Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular meeting of council for Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. If I can ask everyone to please stand for the national anthem. Okay, thank you, and welcome to members of council, staff, and the public. I'll call the meeting to order. Are there any declaration of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, motion to accept the agenda. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cadell, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the agenda of the regular meeting of council on Tuesday, October the 15th, 2024.
Okay, thank you. We will move the item 10 up to number 1, and we also have a delegation from our friendly neighborhood OPP officer to give us an update when we get there. So, okay. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Meetings of the adoption of the previous minutes, regular meeting of council Monday, September 30th, 2024. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Manley, that the minutes of the following meeting be adopted and circulated. Regular meeting of council minutes, Monday, September 30th, 2024.
Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, moving on to delegations, I'd like to welcome Malcolm McPherson from the OPP. Yep.
Hello, for those of you who don't know me, I think most of you do. My name is Malcolm McPherson. I'm a sergeant with the OPP and I work out of Alexandria. It's been a while since I've been here, so I'm just here to kind of update some of our statistics from January to September of 2024 versus January to September of 2023. Violent crime in the area is up slightly, 11.3%. Sexual assaults are down. Most of the other violent crime, it's assaults that have gone up by 14.3%. That the actual numbers are 35 counts of assault versus 40 of this year. So the percentage numbers make it sound worse than the actual crime rate. Property crime has dropped. Break-in enters are down 53.8%. Theft unders are down 15.9%. Mischiefs are down 40.9%. And the only one that's seen a small bump is frauds, which that's not surprising given it seems like everybody is trying to get trying to scam someone. Drug crime is up. Possession charges are up from 3 of last year in the time period to 6 of this year. And trafficking is up. They had 1 charge of trafficking last year in this time period. This year it's at 4. So they're not, the percentages are high, but the actual increase reasonable. Our clearance rate is up for violent crime, property crime, and drug crime. Overall, it's up 42.4% of what's reported. And our unfounded crimes, small increase of 9.4%. And overall, that's it. Yeah, I think the big one is that property crime overall is down in total 14.5%, which is good, and that can be attributed to some people not being in the community anymore, and some people that are out behaving themselves.
Okay. That's spoken like a politician there.
Is there any questions that you'd like me to bring back to my staff sergeant or inspector?
Any questions or observations? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Malcolm. We were having a bit of a chat before. We were talking about presence, and I'll preface this by saying I'm well aware that there's staffing challenges. And I will also say there's been a fantastic job done with reduction in nuisance vehicles, we'll call them, in terms of noise. Though I will add, there seems to be a new crop. If Fabrice has, got some interest, then perhaps he might want to do something about that. We were talking about speed on roads.
Okay.
And one of the examples was Power Dam, Airport Road, where some stats were given and some enforcement was done, seemed to be quite effective. Unfortunately, wasn't repeated, and so it's. I guess it comes down to not a one and done, but sort of a monthly, bi-monthly, or I guess every 2 months, maybe even quarterly, just in terms of some presence, on some of the areas that are known to be
Higher traffic.
Higher speed. Some of the ones that were specifically mentioned, Marcoux and Dorney, because they've been repaved. There have been some complaints, just obviously people are going to enjoy new roads. Unfortunately, with the density of the homes that we have there, there's, some concerns. So really, it's just ideal if we can get some regular presence.
Okay. So Power Dam, Marcoux, and Dorney, have you received any other complaints that may not have gotten to us?
Anybody else that have any
Well,
specifics?
Go ahead. We talked about one other one.
Well, I think coming in and out of our commuter routes are a consistent challenge because people are going from A to B and don't really care what's in between because they just want to get to B. And so, in the mornings and late afternoons, I think the mornings are the worst. And that's consistent through the villages where, Apple Hill, Maxville is certainly a problem because they're heading to the 417, I'm not sure what other roads you were thinking of.
Do you have anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the fourth concession, I've had some complaints of speed.
Malcolm, in your experience, what we're seeing a lot is in higher growth areas, we're seeing them drop the speed limits from 80 to 60. Does that actually slow down traffic? Because, the rule of thumb is if it's 80, you go 100. Is it 60, you go 80?
Depending where it is, and it certainly is effective when combined with enforcement. I know there's some officers, it's not in Glengarry, but they going into St. Andrews West. There's some officers that enforce that heavily, and they get quite a few tickets there. So for these areas, I can ask the officers to spend more time doing their enforcement there.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Just that good news that some of those are coming down. It's unfortunate with assaults that that's up, but yeah, keep up the good work. So we appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to staff reports, Community Service Department, and it'll be Deputy Mayor Williams. It's the one, Karma, for the appointment of a representative to the Glengarry Soccer League.
Oh, all right. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Madden, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry endorses the appointment of a member of the Municipal Recreation Association Committee to the Glengarry Soccer League as a representative of the Township of North Glengarry.
Okay, thank you. Ann?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, basically, there's a new bylaw that's been drawn up to be, for the Glengarry Soccer League to be conforming to the Ontario's Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. And what it was brought forward to the group, after discussion, it was recognized that the document needed further work. And we have two individuals that are part of the Municipal Recreation Association Committee, Dean McGilvery and Malcolm McPherson, that are here tonight, and they're going to speak a little bit to this.
Okay. Welcome, guys. Do you have any stats to wow us to begin with, Dean? or-
No, I don't
nothing?
think so. So yeah, just I guess what precipitated all of this was we were given a proposal for a new bylaw. I want to say the middle of August, and this bylaw was a new one that needed to comply with some of the ONCA regulations, and it was due October 18th. So we looked at it, and there was a few things that really stuck out to Malcolm and myself, and quite a few other people that have been involved in the Glengarry Soccer League over the years. Andrew McCormick is another guy. James McIntosh, previous presidents. One of the things was a proposal to eliminate Glen Sandfield as a voting member. I'd heard anecdotally, I haven't confirmed it, that Greenfield had asked to come back in and was turned down by the executive. This is not, we weren't there kind of as part of this meeting. I know for another example, Dunvegan's numbers have kind of dropped down, but there are a group of people coming up who would like the opportunity to have some Dunvegan teams back in the league, and we thought, based on what we were seeing, that would be discouraged, that they wouldn't be allowed. We looked at the proposal as something that was going to consolidate a lot of power in an executive and take it away from all of the areas that had made the GSL so strong over the years. And we also kind of realized that there's a lack of understanding, I would say, in some of the people who are in charge of the league now, primarily because quite a few of them are from outside of the county, of just how much the soccer league is funded by North Glengarry. A lot of people weren't around 10 years ago when the league was bankrupt and had to come to council for funds to keep it ongoing. And I know we've watched over the last couple of years some of the funding proposals within the league that we thought were a little bit irresponsible and reckless. Eventually they would get, some of them got voted down, some didn't, but so we decided that we thought that it made sense for the township to have a little more oversight within the league, just to kind of make add a check and balance to the league. And give another vote to North Glengarry too, because what it all boils down to is votes. And we've got another proposal that a group of us are working on. We want to expand the voting members and make them have more areas with voting rights, and we're hoping that North Glengarry would be willing, either through a representative from our municipal rec associations or directly from council, to have to back a voting member from North Glengarry for the new proposed members for the Glengarry Soccer League.
Okay. Any questions or comments at this point? So go ahead.
How many voting members are there? Like, is there one from each?
So it's hard to find a reliable constitution, to be honest with you. That's part of the issue. Typically, the areas, all the minor areas, get a vote, and that would be 7 right now. We lost North Lancaster, which is outside of North Glengarry, obviously. Greenfield we lost, so there would be Dunvegan, Lagan, Glen Sandfield, Alexandria, Charlan, Vankleek-Hill,
Maxwell.
Yeah, Maxwell. There's your 7. And typically every team in senior women, senior men, tier 2 men, and tier 2 women will have a vote also, so depending on how many teams there are there. And then there's also an executive that can vote, and the number of that executive just kind of varies depending on the, on the board at the time.
Okay, so it's pretty well unlimited, how many vote? So what is the proposal, like you said?
Their proposal would reduce it to 13 voting members. There'd only be 5 areas. So there'd be, so Glen Sandfield would be eliminated, Dunvegan would be eliminated, there'd be Lagan, Alexandria, Maxville, Charlan, and Vankleekil. So basically 40% of the areas would be outside North Glengarry. And then there'd be an executive. And we're kind of looking at the potential there. There was strong potential for that executive to be maybe heavily outside of North Glengarry also.
Or even the potential for it to be a voting block.
Basically, yeah.
And that could be Lagan having a voting block, or Alexandria having a voting block, or Vankleekil, or Maxville. And the proposal would mean that the executive, if they voted as a block, would only need 2 or 3 votes to pass everything, because everything would be kind of eliminated. Like the membership would be greatly condensed. And what they proposed, if the league rented, leased, or owned any other facilities, it makes a little more sense to kind of streamline some of the voting. But there's the league is heavily subsidized through the township, through the rec associations, through 2 townships. And we felt eliminating input from the areas and council, or the townships, wouldn't be in the best interest long-term. And a lot of the people that were around, 8 to 10 years ago, when we came to council and we, went to Mark Legault and went to Maxville, the people that were around then kind of took a look at this and flags went up right away. But the people that have been introduced since then may not know the history of it, and may not necessarily understand the history of it and what can happen when the checks and balances aren't there. So basically, we're trying to implement more checks and balances. So there's more input, and it's harder to just push something through.
Yeah, the league was lucky to survive that first time that there were not enough checks and balances,
Well,
for sure.
and it's been talked about endlessly, how if it wasn't Reg that came to you
Yeah.
guys,
Reg
if
Boulanger,
it was
for sure.
anybody else, it wouldn't have happened.
Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couldn't you just declare that this is our league and it's supported by our township, and those other groups are welcome to play in it, but we'll make the decisions?
I don't know if we could declare it, but it just depends on who's on the board. Like, it all boils down to votes right now. And we've certainly done our part to try and say that, but, if not everybody agrees with that, or if they don't want to kind of, if the numbers aren't there to push stuff through, there's not a lot we can do.
And we're coming back with a couple of different proposals to what was proposed to us. Like right now we've basically got 2 counter proposals to what was proposed to us. And one of these proposals, or I should say both of them, are the suggestion is to have a voting member from North Glengarry, whether that's somebody from the rec associations or somebody from the actual council, but just as an added vote, as a way to protect the investment.
Okay.
We feel
Go.
the amount of funds that goes in from outside the league, with the amount of funds that goes in from outside the league with the townships, we feel it might be a good idea that you guys have a say.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow up, Ryan, with you, part of the issue with this proposed bylaw that they're pushing through is the reduction of North Glengarry areas, which basically means just the reduction of votes. So what we're hoping to do is have more North Glengarry areas therefore more votes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but my presumption here is that you're going to South Glengarry and asking for a rep there as well?
That's the idea. We're gonna
Okay.
ask North Glengarry first.
Yep, appreciate that. Then go forward, institute a reliable constitution,
Yeah.
and put everything back in order so that everything is on paper and everything is plain going forward.
So everything is clear going forward.
It'd be
Okay.
nice not to have to come back here in 10 years.
Yeah, ideally, and that's, I'm gonna say, good on you for doing this and trying to put everything in order, because obviously it hasn't been done appropriately since 10 years ago, and 10 years ago was dollars, and that was what everybody was worried about, right? But if this becomes a governance thing that allows, call it clarity, I guess, going forward, and, protects the league, I guess, again, for lack of a better term, then I'm gonna say it's a good idea in my books.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we're, do we have a motion on that? Yes. I think we're all in agreement on that. Well, we'll take a vote, and I'll just put it out there that if you don't find somebody on the MRAC board, that I'd be willing to sit on
Great.
that committee. So I will call the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Deputy Mayor wasn't going to vote because it was going to be me maybe, but thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to CS 2024-20, Adoption of Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Councilor Cadell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Manley, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report CS-2024-20, Adoption of Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry adopts the Parks and Recreation Action Plan.
Okay, thank you. Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So council has seen a large portion of this recreation master plan already, but to ensure that we had more information included in there, we added 2 new sections, and the first one is recreation facilities, and the second section is service delivery. In the first section, recreation facilities, we broke it down in 4 different categories, which is the sports complex and flex spaces, and listed all of those. And we also included a section on the renewal of those sports complex and flex spaces to speak to what we think the future is going to look like for those facilities. The second section is called swimming, and we kept that very broad because some of the facilities that we use right now we do not own, which is actually a really good thing because that means that we don't have to maintain them for the moment. And the third section under that point is the hamlet buildings and installation. As you know, we have several recreation facilities that own buildings, plus we have infrastructure out there that sometimes are owned by a third party, but we operate, and those are all inventoried. And the last one is the parks and open spaces. And that speaks to things like the Alexandra Cenotaph, the King George Park, so on and so forth, and what we see in the future for those open spaces. The Section 4 speaks to service delivery. So we speak to user fees, and council has been phenomenal about keeping those very affordable for the community. Very rarely do we ever hear that our costs are too expensive. I'll speak to the Dome. A few years ago, we did increase the prices, but you can still buy a pass for under $100 to go and walk in that facility. We also speak to programming and what we see the future of that being for the municipality, and how we're going to have to approach that creatively in the future so that the costs aren't always borne by the municipality. And partnerships, which speaks again to the quality of programming that we want to bring in, and future funding requirements. So on page 16 of the master plan itself, you will see that there's a table speaking to capital funding that's been provided by council in the past. And you'll note that 2024, the cost seems excessively high, but that's because we have pre-purchased the ice resurfacer for the Maxwell District Sports Complex, as well as subsidized the engineering designs this year in Maxville. We used the building condition assessment plans that had been brought forward to council back in December 2021 to evaluate future costs, and all the way out into 2051. If you note on page 17, you will see that there's a summary of about close to $14 million that's going to be needed to keep these buildings in good shape moving forward. And on page 18, you'll see the inventory of all of our infrastructure. So we actually manage 76 pieces of infrastructure. Now, not all of those are created equal because the cenotaph doesn't need the same maintenance as an arena slab, but there's still quite a number of infrastructure that belongs to the municipality. The action plan was reviewed following those two new sections, and it remains the same. There's nothing really that changes at that level because these are really the actionables that we see for us to be able to continue offering the level of service that our community desires. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment about programming, because it's something we had spent a bit of time talking about when this plan was first introduced to council, and I got some great feedback on some new programming that's in Maxville. I believe it's yoga. I think it's done at the community hall there, and is very much appreciated. And I think, the comment is that it's successful. This is the kind of thing that our communities are looking for, and we want more of it. And so creative ways of thinking about being able to provide better programming in some of our smaller communities would be desirable for the people who live there. I understand, Alexandria's, the larger population has more of the services, and it's easier to provide those services centrally. I get that. And so some services can only be offered in Alexandria. It's understandable. However, we have community halls all over North Glengarry, and obviously the sports complex in Maxville, et cetera, where people would appreciate having a little more programming offered in their community. So it's something I would like to see this plan focus a little bit more on in terms of making that a reality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments? Go ahead, Councilor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just checking the page number here. So page 7, it lists it says it's suggested that council consider the following criteria as a starting point in prioritizing renewal projects. It goes through A through F. And F is the proposed project financially viable? My thinking is that probably should be A in the plan. If it's not viable, if we don't have the funds for it, and it's not financially viable to do it, then maybe that should be the first thing on the list. That's just a thought on that.
Where's that?
Page 7. Under recreation facilities.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And good job. I'm going to say it's almost there. There's a significant amount of proofreading that needs to be done. I marked up a lot, so just in terms of that, I'm thinking we better clean it up, and then we'll move it forward. If we're going to add or change or anything else, we obviously can do it at the same time, but that's my thinking is we better clean it before we pass it.
Is everyone okay with that? So we're deferring it to one meeting? Or whatever?
2 meetings?
2 meetings, okay.
Whatever period of time we need
To clean. Okay, will you, go ahead?
Yeah. Well, I agree for sure. But, I know, and good job, Ann. I think we've got most of what we need here. A few little tweaks, but I think it's important that it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. And then, 6 months from now, we're still
Absolutely.
haven't done it. So,
Yeah, no, for sure.
yeah, thank you.
I hate things that collect dust on a shelf. Okay, so a deferral? It's okay, vote all in favor of a deferral? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ann. Well, you've got the show tonight, eh?
Oh, absolutely.
CES 2024, application to community sport and recreation infrastructure. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Madden, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives the staff report CS 2024-24, application to Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry directs staff to apply to the Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund for the replacement of the Maxwell and District Sports Complex Arena slab and related components for a maximum allowable of $1 million.
Okay, Ann.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. On August 12th, the Government of Canada announced an intake for the Community Sports and Recreation Infrastructure Fund. And the application deadline is the 29th of October. Staff estimates that the township is really well placed to meet the criteria of this funding. First of all the projects have to be completed within 24 months once we've signed the transfer payment agreement. We've been working with EVB, and I'm pleased to report that our engineering designs are 100% complete as of this date. EVB also prepared Class A estimates, and including project management, the total of the project would be $2,008,000. And staff can easily demonstrate that we have the experience to successfully execute on these types of projects with the HVAC, the skate park, and the refurbishment of the Glengarry Sports Palace. The timing of the grant is such that staff expects that we would only hear back in the spring of 2025 if we've been successful in obtaining the funds. And that would initiate a request for tender process. The review would probably go through the summer, coming back to council with a contract then to sign, and the proposed construction would be spring 2026. We've already shared with council that we expect to have some cost savings because of the engineering design coming in much lower than expected. And we also have seen some cost savings on our capital projects in recreation. And we propose that these funds be transferred over into a Maxville Arena refurbishment reserve at the end of the year. In addition, we also propose to allocate $250,000 in 2025 to the reserve, as well as the same amount in 2026. And that would leave an outstanding balance of $268,000 that could either be funded through long-term debt or future capital savings. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you for your report. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think it's important that we take advantage of this funding opportunity. I expect that this is probably the last time we're going to see this amount of money come for recreational grants for recreational assets. And as we know, just reading through Ann's previous report of the Recreation Master Plan, is that one of our top priorities needs to be maintaining our facilities. So that's just my thoughts. And thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick one, and I was looking at the timing, and I just wanted to clarify, make sure I'm right in my head. So if they come back to us in spring of '25, we sign an agreement, then theoretically we have till the spring of '27 to get it done. Ideally, it would be done by the fall of '26 and ready for a new season. But that's, if there was an overrun, then we'd have that sort of time frame. Yeah?
Absolutely, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or comments? Okay, I'll call the vote.
Mr. Mayor, if I could ask for a recorded vote, please.
Okay, recorded vote. Okay. That's me.
You do?
Oh, you're gonna do it? Yeah. I don't know, I haven't done one in years.
This is my second one ever.
Okay.
So Deputy Mayor Williams,
In favor.
Councillor Cadell? Councillor Manley?
Yes, in favor.
Councillor Madden?
Yes.
Councillor Martin?
Yes, in favor.
And the Mayor?
In favor.
The motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Okay, moving on to changes to community improvement plan. Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Martin, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report CS 2024-27, changes to the community improvement plan, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the changes to programs A, B, and G of the North Glengarry Community Improvement Plan and directs staff to proceed with public consultations.
Okay, thank you. Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a lot of the report tonight is housekeeping, but the main components that we're going to speak to are increasing the funds for historical or properties are designated to our heritage register, recognizing the fact that it costs a lot more money to restore those properties, and including a brownfield component to the project. So if you go to section Program A, to the design grant, you'll see that we're increasing the amount for the design grant to $2,000. So 50% up to a maximum of $2,000. And again, those are for properties that have been designated to the Municipal Heritage Program. If you go to Program B, you'll note that we're increasing the amount of funding that would be available to those same properties up to a maximum of $7,000 for the first facade and a maximum of $4,000 for the second facade. Under Program G, which speaks to brownfield, we're proposing to try to incentivize anyone who wants to develop a brownfield by doing a tax increment grant, where let's say the property is worth $150,000. After it's finished developing, it's worth $1 million. Well, the municipal portion of the tax increase that that property owner would see would be reduced the first year by 100%. The second year would go to 80%, 60%, 40%, 20%, down to zero. So there is basically no cost or no loss to the municipality. So we're not funding environmental assessments where a property could potentially not be developed even though we funded those studies. So there's really no risk to the municipality to move forward with Program G. And if council is so inclined to approve these recommendations, we would be going into public consultation. So there would be opportunities to review these proposals after the community has come back to us with their comments or questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Go ahead. Councillor Cadell.
You know what, originally the CIP was a program to lend a hand, you know, and do something. I don't see increasing it to something to the point where we're paying for it, you know, or which isn't exactly where you're going. But I disagree. I think the money that's available is a nice little perk for someone who wants to do something with their home. But I don't agree with more.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Respectfully. Because this is just for the heritage properties that this amount is actually increasing. And I'll say personally, having worked on a heritage home, not through this program, there is a slight increase to the cost to do things, especially if you're trying to be respectful of a building, if we can call it that. I think it's a good idea. The brownfield, the tax increment grant, as you said, and no risk to the municipality, incentive to a developer, and incentive to anybody who may own a property that is contaminated or may cause them to sell it. I think they're both, I mean, cost to the municipality is, we're talking a difference of, what, $4,500, $3,500 actually, for the facades, and the tax increment is nothing. Eventually, we get the tax revenue. There's no loss in the interim, only development of property and development of the area. So I think it's a win all the way around.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Madden. If I'm not mistaken, weren't you approached by a petroleum company who has got all kinds of brownfields, and they said, you know, we can't sell these properties. Nobody wants to buy something where the soil is contaminated. And, you know, if there were any programs out there that would incentivize the cleanup and make these properties valuable, then they could actually be developed rather than them sitting vacant forever on our main streets of our communities and that kind of thing. So I think that this has real potential value, you know, by just simply potentially not realizing some tax income. Like, that's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. And I just wanted to mention that the other thing we discussed at the Arts, Culture, and Heritage meeting was the possibility of, because we had taken the tax increment grant for infill projects out of the program because there'd been no uptake on that option for infill. But, you know, the climate for building and building on small vacant lots has changed in the last number of years. So it is possible that we might consider another amendment perhaps next year of putting the tax increment grant for infill back into the program as an incentive to actually build on vacant pieces of land. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Just to make it clear that the increment is only on the increased tax, right? So at 100%, they're not getting a whole break on the tax, just what it was increased. And eventually it would go down, they'd be paying their full tax on the full value of the property.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll speak to 2 points. Yes, it's very clearly defined in Program G that it's on the municipal portion of the taxes only, and the onus is on the owner to determine that with MPAC. So again, it's the owner who has to identify or prove that the property meets the record, and also that they have to do all the legwork with MPAC to be able to bring back that tax credit to us. And to Deputy Mayor Williams' point, it was only one property that was identified by this oil company. But I think what the tax increment grant does is it shows a willingness on the part of the municipality to work with these developers that are willing to undertake these more difficult projects. So I think that that's, when we talk about perceptions, it's a very positive perception. And I think that that has a lot of value also. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments? I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, thank you. Moving on to, so we're going to race through these.
Absolutely.
All right. Bylaw 42-2024 to designate 1996 County Road 20 in Maxville St. Elmo Presbyterian Church. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report CS 2024-28 to designate 1996 County Road 20 in Maxville, St. Elmo Presbyterian Church, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives bylaw 42-2024, being a bylaw to designate the property at 6 Church Street in Maxville as a property of cultural heritage value or interest, and that the bylaw 42-2024 be read a first, second, and third time in open council this 15th day of October 2024.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, if you will allow me, I'll batch all 6 reports in one. So basically, back on September 9th, Council authorized staff to proceed with the designation process for the 6 properties. 3 of those properties are in Maxville. That's the St. Elmo Presbyterian Church, the Congregational Church, and 6 Church Street. And 3 of those are in Alexandria, which is 101 Center Street, 53 Dominion Street, and 209-215 Main Street North in Alexandria. So on September 11th, staff sent out notices of intent to designate to all of the property owners. The information was posted on the township's website An ad was placed in the Review, and we also notified the Ontario Heritage Trust that we had formally begun the designation process for these properties. Each piece of communication contained the information that there was a 30-day period to receive comments or objections, and that the last day to file a notice of objection was Friday, October 11th, 2024. We're pleased to report that no comments or objections were received. If council endorses the proposed bylaws this evening, a letter would be sent to the property owners confirming that the bylaw was passed by council. A notice of heritage designation will be posted to the website, and the Ontario Heritage Trust will be informed that the bylaws were passed by council. At this point, anyone who wants to object to the bylaws will have to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal by forwarding to the tribunal and the township's clerk within 30 days after the date of publication on the township's website, which is going to be tonight, a notice which contains the reasons in support of the objection as well as the fee charged by the tribunal. So the last day to appeal the bylaws will be November 14th, 2024. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, just on the, I'm looking at the resolution. We are at the top of the resolution talking about County Road 20, Maxwell St. Elmo, and that the Council of Township of North Glengarry receives bylaw 4220, being bylaw to designate property at 6 Church Street.
Oh, yeah, so I'm not quite sure what happened. I think it's in the transcription because,
Okay,
yeah,
okay, so you guys all figure that out? Okay.
yes, absolutely.
Any further questions? Go ahead.
One point, we're doing them in a batch, so the Schedule B on this one and the next one, so about the 2 churches, has them as single detached dwellings, so it's just to change it to
Property.
detached buildings or property,
Yes, yeah.
whatever the language needs to be there. But both of them about the church need that change.
Go ahead. Councillor Cadell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does this designation by us, if we approve this, does this commit the property owners to anything?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the only thing that this does is it gives us a really good period where if ever someone were to apply for a demolition permit, it gives the township the time to react to that demolition permit. If we don't move forward with these designations and the properties only remain listed, then let's say if someone wanted to demolish, I'll use St. Elmo's Congregational Church, for example, we won't be under the new changes to the Ontario Heritage Act allowed to start a designation process. In the past, you were allowed to do that. Now the government doesn't want you to stop development. So if we want to save or protect these buildings, we have to do it proactively. We can't do it reactively. So right now, the municipality does not have any property development guidelines. The only way those properties would be affected is if they came through the CIP and asked for funds, then they would have to meet the criteria under the community improvement plan. But that is basically it.
Go ahead. Subsequent.
Just to be clear, that's the only thing, is that we are,
We'll
will
get a
be
heads up.
allowed to prevent them from demolishing it. Would that be,
No, we
No.
can't. We can't prevent them from
No.
demolishing. All we're gonna
we
find
have
out
some time to...
is we'll know, and I'll use an example that happened where the Tel de Jeunes school is. Right on that corner was a magnificent house that needed fixing. And there was, people were up in arms about it. There was no chance for anybody to react. And they took it down basically overnight. And people woke up the next morning and this beautiful house was gone. So I think it just gives everybody a chance. We can't stop them in the end, if I'm correct.
So the municipality can. You'll have to pay for a lot of very expensive studies to do
Right.
so.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
the answer is yes, the municipality has the power to do so. Again, I think that you have to look at the environment in North Glengarry. For the most part, people cherish these buildings. And I think that's significant. We can see that through the fact that we didn't receive any comments or objections to the designation process. And it was very much publicized. It was posted on Facebook. Everything was done to make sure that the community knew about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
Did the owners respond to you?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we proactively went and met with the property owners other than the Presbyterian Church and the Congregational, just because there is no designate in Maxville for that. And we spoke to the designation process with those property owners. So we actually laid the groundwork ahead of time so that they wouldn't be surprised. And the whole intention behind that was if ever there was a property owner that did not want to move forward with the designation process, we would not have moved forward with it. In actual fact, one of the property owners that we were proposing to designate their property, they asked us to designate a second property because they were so interested in what this was, the protection that this was offering to their property.
Okay.
Okay, further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. And moving on to Deputy Mayor Williams. Do you have the next one? These are really screwed up in my,
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cadell, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report CS 2024-33. Is that right?
Yep.
To designate 18191 Kenyon Concession 19 in Maxville, the St. Elmo Congregational Church, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives bylaw 43-2024, being a bylaw to designate the property at 18191 Kenyon Concession 19 Indian Lands in Maxville, St. Elmo Congregational Church, as a property of cultural heritage value or interest, and that bylaw 43-2024 be read first, second, and third time in open council this 15th day of October 2024.
okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on this one? All those in favor? Motion is carried, none opposed. And next one up is Councillor Cadell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Manley, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report CS 2024-28 to designate number 6 Church Street in Maxville, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives bylaw 44-2024, being a bylaw to designate the property at number 6 Church Street in Maxville as a property of cultural heritage value or interest, and that bylaw 44-2024 be read a first, second, and third time in open council this 15th day of October 2024.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Madden. Oh, you're just voting in advance? Well, we all know what he's doing. Yeah. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. Okay, next one up, Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Madden, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report CS 2024-29 to designate 101 Center Street North in Alexandria, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives bylaw 45-2024, being a bylaw to designate the property at 101 Center Street in Alexandria as a property of cultural heritage value or interest, and that bylaw 45-2024 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted in open council this 15th day of October 2024.
Thank you. Questions on this one? All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. Councillor Madden.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Martin, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report CS 2024-30 to designate 53 Dominion Street North in Alexandria, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives bylaw 46-2024, being a bylaw to designate the property at 53 Dominion Street North in Alexandria as a property of cultural heritage value or interest, and that bylaw 46-2024 be read a first, second, and third time in open council this 15th day of October 2024.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion is carried, none opposed. And Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report CS 2024-31 to designate 209-215 Main Street North in Alexandria, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives bylaw 47-2024, being a bylaw to designate the property of 209-215 Main Street North in Alexandria as a property of cultural heritage value or interest, and that the bylaw 47-2024 be read first, second, and third time in open council this 15th day of October 2024.
Thank you. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion is carried. None opposed. Okay, thank you, Ann. Was that your final parting gift to us, was to just inundate us with tons of things? Okay, moving on to Public Works, PW 2024-28, provincial grant for roads and bridges to support housing. Councillor Cadell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Madden. That the Council of the Township receives report PW-2024-28, provincial grant for roads and bridges to support housing, and that the Council of the Township authorizes application to the MHIP-HECS grant for the bypass project to the provincial government for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there is an opportunity to apply for a large bucket of funding from the provincial government, and it has some strings attached to it, so it needs to be directly related to housing to be able to apply for the funding. And Ben DeHaan, Director of Transportation Services in SDG, we had been talking when we were looking, as we were working on the Main Street project, and part of that environmental assessment was a truck bypass for Alexandria to try and move heavy truck traffic off Main Street. When we were looking at this funding and the position of some of the applications for development within Alexandria, this seemed like a good opportunity to provide some infrastructure for the community, and that would help encourage the development as well. I also, after putting in the report, we got some comments back from the planner, Peter Young, which Sarah had asked me to share with council as well, so I can do that later on in the report. Essentially, this handout in front of you, and it was attached to the report as well, gives you a good overview of what we're proposing. Going through and having a look at the feasibility of the area where we talk about the crossing and the area of putting in a road, it would be very advantageous to Alexandria and provide a good county road level of service to our current industrial and some undeveloped land that is industrial commercial zoned. It would provide the possibility of expanding the development boundary in that section. It's not guaranteed, but it's something that we could look at. We had a look at the grades and the feasibility of that section as a grade crossing, and it is an excellent position to put a grade crossing because we have two high embankments on either side of the rail there, so it's very feasible to be able to put in a grade separated crossing. It also provides good connectivity to the County Road 34 and up to the 417. So if you have a look at the financials, it is, I'm estimating $9.6 million to build the bridge. That was based on some studies by the county and some very solid numbers that we have. We also have some very solid numbers for the arterial roadway, but it is, I think it's actually a pretty accurate estimate. So the provincial contribution is up to 50% of that, and we have been in talks with the counties. We've talked to the CAO and the Director of Transportation Services, and they are very on board with this. And there's another report coming from Ben to council. And so yes, we're looking for council's approval to submit the grant after the grant is submitted, it's the start of a long process. So an environmental assessment would have to be done. So that's, there's a bit of a misnomer to environmental assessment. When a lot of people hear it, they think that means that we're just going to go and count the frogs along the road allowance and count how many frogs, and that depends how our road is going to get built. It takes not only the environment into the physical, natural environment into account, but the social aspects and the input from the community. So that's really what you're looking at, and it's cultural heritage and everything. So it should be a society impact and environment impact assessment would be more accurate. So just to point out that this is just the first step in a long process. It is a competitive bid. There is a 120 million put aside specifically for rural communities, and there's a whole nother bucket of funding for larger cities. So I actually think this has a very good chance of getting through. We're also applying for funding for the grant, as you would know about, and sorry, for the lagoon, for Alexandria as well, which you know, if we don't get lagoon funding, this application could still go ahead, but we would still have a lot of problems with trying to, you know, keep on developing and expanding the boundary, obviously. So, and the other point to mention is it is a very strong application if it's a joint application. So having the county's support means it is very viable financially. That is for I think it was 3.45 million is a very small amount for a local municipality, and to get this type of infrastructure. That would just be, for example, if we were to go halves with the county on it. So I think it's a good investment, and I'm looking for council's approval.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would be absolutely fantastic to be able to complete this project, especially with those kinds of funding dollars. And, you know, it would finish that circle of the bypass and really allow traffic finally to flow properly through Alexandria and around Alexandria and get those trucks off Main Street. Very desirable. However, I have a couple of concerns. Number one, because this would require, well, first of all, it has to also go, as you pointed out, through to county council. And, you know, those are 12 people, 10 of which are from municipalities other than North Glengarry. And they may have some thoughts on that as to whether they are prepared to invest in this, and they may throw their support behind it 100%, or they could throw it out. I guess that remains to be seen. But having said that, it will be what it'll be. My greater concern is the need to get the Main Street, Alexandria Main Street project back on track and get looking at, you know, funding to get the Main Street done. It's been sidelined now for some time due to the complications associated with County Road 22. And my concern is that there just isn't going to be enough money for both. And when push comes to shove, I think the Main Street of Alexandria should be a priority over the bypass, even though it's all part of the same project. I get that. But I'm just uncomfortable at the thought of the fact that, you know, if we are successful with this funding, you know, it's going to be impossible to say no to it. And then what if it derails the Main Street Alexandria project? Because that's crucial, it's critical. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Tim.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I really don't. I can't provide any real reassurance apart from staff focus. There is definitely a focus on that Main Street project and trying to get it done. In fact, one of the reasons that this was proposed is it's essentially part of that Main Street development. Because if you can get the trucks off Main Street, that's a huge part of the puzzle. And if we went and funded the literal rebuilding of Main Street and weren't able to bring the trucks off, we're still only halfway done. So I can promise you that staff is definitely focused on that project, and if we could have shoehorned it in there, we would have. But we think it's a good opportunity, and it's at this stage, it's far from guaranteed. So if you forgive the expression, I feel like it's worth throwing it against the wall and see if it sticks with the province. And we still have decision-making abilities after that point. So the deadline to apply is this Friday. So
So there's no rush then?
yeah.
I guess just to answer that question, and probably unfair to ask you that'll be more of a question for county council, and I mean, those would be the exact question that I would hope you would ask at that meeting and say, you know, and have Ben, and I think preparing Ben for that question as well, just, you know, just because it is so important that Main Street is so bad and something needs to get done. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further to that point, I'm going to suggest that potentially the approach with the counties is we're interested in this, but not at the expense of the Main Street project.
Yep.
However, you all should very much consider that this is the same project. And I've said this when we go to the province for money. Well, actually, we all said this the last time we went to a delegation. If we got both of these right now, we wouldn't be asking for any more money for a really long time. Because this gets done what we need to get done. And this gets Alexandria in a position to grow unencumbered. Again, lagoons required. We know that. We're working on that actively. But this gets everything done that needs to happen for Alexandria to be what it could be. And we're not going back to the counties for money for more roads in the next period of time, especially for Alexandria. I won't say for the rest of the county, but, you know, if everybody around the table understands that, I understand they're all not going to be jumping up and down for it, but it is the largest urban center in the counties outside of Cornwall. And everybody needs to remember that and needs to be reminded of that.
God, we could use that slogan, be all that we can. I forget that somebody has that already. Yeah. Don't sing. Okay. Any further? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is specifically for roads and bridges that will promote housing. And so is that what the Main Street of town is?
Yeah, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the application has very stringent for requirements for how you have to relate it to new development.
Okay.
So Main Street, when we looked through it all, we couldn't find a way to make it apply, you know, to make it fit into this funding application.
Okay, so it's its own category then. It doesn't really interfere with the potential for a downtown
That's right.
development.
Yeah.
There is this funding, so one, for example, we actually looked at County Road 22. So County Road 22 is an ongoing project, and we thought, you know, this is a project that we'd like to get more funding for. It's more of a county project, but we work very well together, and what helps the county on County Road 22 helps us. So we tried to relate that to this application, but we just couldn't tick all the boxes to make it be successful, and they're competitive. So here we can really provide that application, and this is actually probably a good time to read out because it talks to your point, the response from Peter, because Peter had a look at this application to see how, to make sure my numbers were correct. And so he said, to quote him directly, that this bypass would show and would help support the lands and increase us from being able to provide around 750 units to 1,370 units, in addition to future expansion. And he doesn't say that, but how that actually happens is by providing that extra connection. They have municipal frontage, which allows them to move forward in a different way with their application, which is a lot quicker. So that's just, when we first looked at this, we looked at County Road 22, we looked at Main Street, all of our existing priorities, and we're really hoping that the province goes and puts out some funding to help those established areas and build them up so that it gives more incentive for the community to live there, but this is what we thought had the best chance of success.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? The motion is carried. There are none opposed. Thank you, Tim. Okay, items under the consent agenda. Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Manley. The Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives the items from the consent agenda for information purposes only.
Any questions on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. And notice of motion, next regular meeting of council, October 28th, 2024, 6 p.m. here in the county chambers. And question period. You're the only person here. No questions? Okay. Okay, so we have no closed session. Confirming bylaw. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Martin, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry adopts bylaw 49/2024, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, and that bylaw 49/2024 be read a first, second, third time and enacted in open council this 15th day of October 2024.
Thank you. All those in favor? Motion is carried. And just before we adjourn, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Anne Leduc for all the work that she's put into our municipality in the last 8.5 years. And not everybody lasts that long in a position, and you had a big position, with recreation, and all the stuff that comes with community development, economic development. And we really appreciate the way you brought everything to our attention. Your heart was always in the right place, and you definitely have a big heart. We know that, and we thoroughly appreciate everything that you've done for us. This could be your last ever municipal meeting. You've worked in this sector for a long time, and we look forward to you at GIAG and all the work that we can maybe do together. And so I know you're not going far, but again, we thoroughly appreciate it, and the Deputy Mayor would like to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, you've had a big role in this municipality since, when did you start?
Partly 215, but 216 for real.
Right, so 216 for real and 215. It's kind of appropriate that, you finished up with a lot of the CIP stuff tonight, and because I know that you were hired on contract when the CIP was being developed, and then so you had a hand in developing the CIP with Carrie Stroutman and everyone else who was involved, and then very masterfully managing it in its heyday when it did so much for North Glengarry, particularly our downtown cores. But that's not all you've done for us. You've managed a very large portfolio, and very, very successfully, and I think there are a lot of accomplishments since 2016 that can be directly applied to you and your leadership and your skills. So we'll miss you, but thank you for your time here at North Glengarry.
Well, thank you for your kind words. It's been my pleasure to work on these projects for North Glengarry.
I also forgot to mention just, the fact that I send you stuff and you translate it for me the next day. So just a warning, you're getting one early tomorrow morning, so for tomorrow night. So Go ahead, Gary.
If I can, Ann, thank you very much for your work in recreation. I've worked with you in the last couple of years, especially with on the recreation side. And good luck in your future. Thank you very much.
Okay. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams, that there be no further business to discuss. The meeting was adjourned at 7:15, sorry.
Jeez. 7:15 PM.
7:15.
Yeah. Oh, I had a joke there, but I'm just gonna let it go. Yeah. All those in favor of the motion? The motion is carried. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and everyone from the public that are watching online. Thank you, and everybody have a great rest of your week. Thanks.